Hello, ladies and gentlemen. If we haven't met yet, my name is Angela Olmos. I'm a full-time realtor in the Northeast Florida area, and I make YouTube videos to help you go through the process of buying, selling, and investing in real estate with ease. So the topic that I want to talk to you guys about today is, yes, if you have been following real estate at all within the last few years, you know that we are in a shifting market. And everyone just kind of uses that word, in their own perspective as to what a shift might mean to them. But I wanted to just kind of highlight, what are some of the indicators that we look at to really determine whether we're in a shifting market or not, and most importantly, be able to adjust accordingly. So one of those indicators is seller incentives. And I brought something to share with you guys, which is this amazing slide that I got from my new brokerage, United Real Estate Gallery. And this is a great way to determine a trend on something that's been happening in our industry within the last few years. So let's take a look at this. This takes into consideration 2021, which was a gangbusters year for real estate. The interest rates were at historic lows. There was hardly any supply and just very high demand. People were just buying homes left and right, waiving all kinds of contingencies. It was just a very different market dynamic. And in that market dynamic, when we looked at this key indicator, seller incentives, first of all, let me just back up a little bit. What are they? These are the benefits that we negotiate for our buyers that have to do with being able to take ownership of those homes with ease. These might be things that we would say they sweeten up the deal. So seller incentives could be a set amount determined by the negotiation to be used for the buyer towards closing costs. They could also be set amount determined again by the negotiation to be used towards a rate buy down, maybe perhaps prepaid HOA fees, CDD fees. We can get really creative, and it could be tailor fit to be just what's important to you and what the seller is willing to get. So it's really a negotiation, and we can talk a little bit more about that depending on, what's important to you. It does have to be realistic for it to work. But when we can get that fine balance where the seller is willing to give that seller incentive and you are able to take advantage of that, that actually gets you into homeownership without having to pay as much if they are paying for the closing costs, right? So if we take a look at what those amounts were back in 2021, the average seller incentive in 2021 was only $4,358. And that is very indicative of that market because there was just not enough homes and too many buyers and low interest rates, and everybody wanted to buy. So why would sellers have to give buyers any incentives with those market dynamics? So yeah, that was back then, 2021. Now let's take a look and see what happened in 2022. Now there's been definitely an adjustment, a shift, right? So what happened just a year after in 2022, then the average incentive now went up to $7,936. So close to $8,000 from $4,358 in 2021 to now $7,936 in 2022. So it increased a lot. And then fast forward a year later, which is the year that we're in right now in 2023, our average seller incentive given in this market now is $9,297 an average. Okay, so let's recap. 2021, the average seller incentives given were only $4,358. Nice to have, but not a whole lot of incentives. Now let's see what happened a year later. Now those seller incentives adjusted to an average of $7,930. That looks a lot better for buyers. And then just a year later, this year that we're in now, they've increased even further to $9,297 in average. So now keep in mind, this serves as a guideline to really know like where we're at in the market and how this is all shifting. And what that means for you as a buyer is that if you're entering the market now, you could expect to get some incentives, some things that would help you sweeten up the deal, if you will, while you get into homeownership. So I thought I'd bring that up to you guys. And also if you are a seller, now for sellers, what this means is if you're thinking of selling your home, you want to go in with an open mind and consider things like incentives to be able to attract the buyer to your home. It's in this market dynamic, it would be appropriate to offer an incentive for the buyer to use. And then again, we could talk about that, what your comfort zone is as far as like giving those seller incentives, whether it's be for closing costs or right back down. There's a lot of different ways that we can do that. And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you is the amount of incentives that are giving, also, and how many of those incentives are giving. Back in 2021, there weren't that very many incentives that were given. Just out of 3,000 closings in November, there were just 581 that were giving seller incentives for. Now, a year later, we had less closings. We had 2,115 closings in November. And out of those, 583 were given incentives. Okay. And then in this year, we've got this year in November, we had 1,754 closings. And out of those 754 closings, 617 received seller incentives. So again, that's indicative that it would be appropriate for a seller to offer an incentive for the buyer to come in and purchase that home. And as a buyer, that means it's a good thing to take advantage of that. So let's chat a little bit more about that, if that is something that you have been thinking of doing, whether that means you're interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate. I'd love to use my experience to help you through that process, because it really doesn't have to be stressful. It can be very stressful if you don't know what you're doing, or you're working with a realtor who might just not know or have a whole lot of experience. But that's your choice, and I would love to be an opportunity. I'll have the opportunity to help you. With that said, you guys have a wonderful day, and remember to be kind to one another. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Take care.